Thanks.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our ETCareers webinar on acing your first job hunt, the tips, the tricks, and the industry hacks. Now, we all know that the first job is a special moment, and that's for each one of us. But finding that best and most relevant first job is definitely not an easy road. And there are many questions and less answers in our minds at this stage. So how do we find the answers? That's why we are here. Joining us today are two industry experts. We have Neeti Sharma, President and co-founder, TeamLease Edtech, and we have Lekha Palakkot, Director and Learning at Brillio. Welcome, Neeti, and welcome, Lekha.
Thank you, Deblina. Lovely being here.
Yeah. So Neeti and Lekha will actually help us decode today for all of you who are joining in online and through Zoom for the first-time job seekers. How do you get the practical advice you need to ace this journey? So we'll have a discussion for about the first 40 minutes with some of the questions we wanted to ask Lekha and Neeti. And we know a lot of you have questions and you have sent it to us or you're going to ask us online. We will try to also take as many questions as we can from there. So that's our plan for the next 1 hour. With that, let's get started. So I want to start with a common question for both of you, Neeti and Lekha. So, job search is a critical aspect of finding that right first job. But it's very, very difficult in the beginning to understand how to search. So how can we narrow our search options to match the skills and the market demand? And how do you find companies which are really hiring freshers and the kind of roles we are looking for? If you can shed some light on that. Maybe we can start with Neeti and then Lekha for this.
Sure. Thanks, Deblina. Good evening, everyone. The first jobs are obviously the most difficult to understand. What do I want? How do I get to the employment? How do I get to the organization? How do I open doors? But to look for which job is right for me, I would say that there are various areas that one could look at. First and foremost, identify what you believe your skill sets are. Today, there are lots of assessment tools that can help you actually gauge what you would be good at and what you may not be very good at right away. So basis that skill set assessment, you do it directly yourself, you do it through counselors. There are various ways of doing these assessments. Understand what your positives are, and basis those positives, try looking for the job which probably will be most relevant to you. For example, if you're an outgoing personality, something in media, something in sales, something in marketing may be apt for you as against just doing a back office, sitting behind a computer kind of jobs. So I think first and foremost, it's important to match or get the right kind of jobs I'm looking for. Secondly, once you identify that, hey, this is the path I want to take, that is when you start narrowing down on organizations that probably you think are in the industry, and you may want to look at working with them, and then go to their websites. There are job postings on each of these organization sites. There are common job portals which actually list all these job openings. So there are various ways. Go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn gives a lots of job openings on a daily basis. You have to keep researching, you have to keep looking out. But first and foremost, narrow down on what role you want to do, what you believe you are good at, and what kind of companies you would want to work with. I'll pause here, Deblina.
Thank you, Neeti. So counseling and then, looking at your skills and then applying. Lekha, I think what you would like to add to this?
So, Deblina, I'm going to pick up from what your question is, right? Your skills matching the market demand. So I think your skills, and I second what Neeti exactly said. The key here is your skills, right? I think all of us need to spend that time, sit back, spend that time, analyze what you have skills, right? What are the skills which you have, and do a SWOT analysis, right? Which will put on the entire charter out for you in terms of what you're good at, what you're not good at, what is the areas of opportunity, what is that you want to do, and within time, whatever that is. Further to this, I will also give it an IT spin to it because I come from the IT background, right? So once you are absolutely clear in terms of what is that you want to achieve, what is your strengths and what is your weakness, then your funnel becomes narrower, right? Then it becomes easier for you to search. Then the option is, what kind of organization are you talking about? And if you talk about the IT organization, Devlina, we have product companies, we have services organization, we have captive centers, right? And the reason why I want to call out all these things is because the DNA of each of these organizations are different. The culture is different. The mindset is different. So then you kind of analyze your mindset and say, okay, where do I fit in? Your search again narrows down, right? Then the next thing is, now there's this whole gig economy, which we're talking about, right? We're talking about those entrepreneurs starting up a multi-billion company over a year's time, right? So do you want to go with a brand organization, right? You want to work for a bigger organization, or you're absolutely enthusiastic about those heavily growing organizations? Today, there is nothing but in next 1 year, they want to hit 1 billion. Is that the urge which you have, and do you want to go there, right? Which domain you want? So if you have all these things in place, I think at the end of the day, your search becomes really narrow, and then you have to figure out what that you want to do. And once you have figured out, as Neeti said, right, there are a lot of open platforms for you to go ahead and apply. I think always been my recommendation. Your alumni is the best place where you can start. Your seniors, your alumni, those are the best people whom you can have connect with and then explore in whatever you have narrowed down. So I think that's basically my 2 cents on that question, Devlina.
Well, thank you, Lekha. I think the alumni point is important. I'll come back to one more aspect of this later, which is around layoffs and how can you really understand what's happening in your identified sector. But let's move on now a little bit more deeper into the process. So Neeti, coming back to you. So you already advise, many young professionals, and one key thing which comes up is, your resume and your cover letter. These are must-haves, but often these are not considered at par, and the tracking systems reject it, or it doesn't go forward, in the selection criteria. So even at that stage, how can you stand out and how can you really customize it for a company? So any thoughts on that would be really great for our participants.
Yeah, sure, Deblina. So, we all keep hearing that our first impressions are always the last impressions. And in a way, a covering letter and a resume becomes the first time job seeker's first impression. So we have to get it right. I mean, we can't go wrong on just what I write in my covering letter, because the recruiter is not looking at you or meeting you firsthand. He or she is actually looking at the document that you're sending to them. So it's important that we get the covering letter and the resume right. So certain things that I always advise first-time job seekers to do, both for resume writing as well as the cover letter writing, is research the organization to whom you're going to apply, right? Don't just do a shot in the dark. Understand the role that you're looking for and the role you're applying for. Understand the organization, understand the background. Today, it's become very easy actually to get information on the internet about an organization, about leaders in the organization. Go to their LinkedIn profiles. You'll understand the culture that the companies are actually trying to follow, right? So there's a lot of research that you need to do. And when you're writing your covering letter as well as a resume, please ensure that your data points are specific to that role and to that organization. And please don't go all over the world saying in class 8th, I did this, or class 12th, I did that. Recruiters don't have that much time. Even if they have patience to read, they may not have time because they're screening through thousands and thousands of such profiles. So I think that's point 1. Point 2, I would like to say is that when you're opening on your covering letter, please make a very strong first impression. Talk about why you will be an asset to the organization and what is it that you can add value, rather than saying, hey, I'm here to learn and I'm going to grow with you and all those kind of things. So you have to stand out. Thirdly, I would say that whatever you put into your resume, please ensure that it's true, completely 100% true. Because I've seen a lot of profiles where, people start writing so many things about what they have done. Some they would have done, some they wouldn't have done. But trust me, you get caught at the interview stage. So my biggest advice to everyone is, don't fib any information about yourself. Be true to what you have learned. Be true to what you know. And that will actually help you not just get the first job, even in your careers. Lastly, I would like to say that whether it's the covering letter or the resume, keep it short and simple. It's very easy to write pages and pages about yourself. Or I know people who just write half a page and say, I'm just a fresher, what do I do? But I think we have to balance it out, but keep it short, keep it to the point. We don't want recruiters getting bored halfway through and junking up profiles, but we also don't want recruiters reading 2 lines and saying, hey, I don't think this person's done much. So I think we have to research, we have to keep it to the point, we have to be positive about our approach, enthusiastic about why I want to join an organization, but all of this in a very crisp and to the point manner.
Right, right. And I think, like you mentioned, maybe to the point of making it specific, examples would also help, right? So instead of saying I'm curious, if you can give an example, where I have really done a course on machine learning, I've graduated in a particular technology, but I've also done this machine learning because I was curious to understand. And maybe I've done a project using public data, which demonstrates this. Even though I'm a fresher, I think that will demonstrate more specific, interest and curiosity, right?
And if I have to add, Deblina, to what you're saying, I think today between years of semesters or of graduation or post-grad, lot of students are doing, vacation jobs, so summer vacation roles. Even if it's not a job, but even if it's an experience, adding all of that actually counts in your profile and in your cover letter, rather than just saying, oh, I've done this education qualification and that's about it. So I think talking about yourself, but in a very nice, positive manner really helps.
Got it, got it, got it. Great. No, thank you so much for sharing that, Neeti. Coming back to you, Lekha. So I think at Brillio, you've been inducting as well as, helping develop career professionals, and especially in technology. And two things there, Lekha, wanted to kind of understand a little bit more. One is a lot of young professionals don't really have a big network yet. While you spoke about alumni and reaching out to them is important, but if you imagine their LinkedIn profiles, how can they start, building their network? So any advice on that would be helpful. And the second thing is, coming back to tech sector, which was a mainstay for many professionals, especially, young students graduating from college. But we are seeing the kind of layoffs today, both in large companies as well as in some of the high growth startups. So how can, when a person is looking at a job, is there a way for them to be a little aware of what's happening and make the right choice, especially if they have a choice?
Sure. So the way I would like to structure the answer for that question is, Deblina, so one is, how do you build your network, right? Where do you go and look for the network? So I think I'll take a little bit from our first question, right? And I think all of us, whoever is there, right, this is our first job. So we need to start asking ourselves, where do you want to see yourself 5 years from now? I think that's the starting. And trust me, none of us had the right answer when we started asking the first time, right? We would have asked this some 10,000 times. And if you're not able to get to that answer, right, get support, get a mentor. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of mentor, right? You need to have mentor, whether it is your first job or your last job. I have multiple mentors, right? So when you have a mentor, that whole charter of where you want to become in next 5 years becomes very easy, right? For us to chart that out. So begin there. Now, once you have clarity in that, right, there are multiple platforms where you can actually search for jobs. Along with that, you can also build your network, right? Platforms like, LinkedIn's, right? Where you can actually have networking conversations. You can go back to your alumni where you can have those networking conversations. But my suggestions to all these people who are looking out in their networking, it's not easy to just go ahead and talk to an executive or talk to a professional with 20 years of experience, right? You need to be mindful of where they are in their profession, what level they are in on. So the advice and the suggestion which I would give them is, again, I think Neeti spoke about, is what value can I bring to this conversation, right? That's more important. Be professional, be proactive, be motivated about the whole thing, right? And be proactive about getting feedbacks from them. Now, I've seen a lot of freshers, they attend the interviews and then if they fail, they just walk out, right? Stop there, take a minute, go talk to the person and say, hey, what do you think I went wrong? Where did I go wrong, right? That actually pictures a very positive frame about yourself. Even though you don't get that job, that person will always remember you, right? Because that really shows that you're curious, you want to learn. And these are the two biggest things which we would look at in these early talents, right? So you're really curious. So I think these are qualities which we look, and this will definitely help you to build those networks, right? The other thing, what you can also do is you can attend those career fairs, which happens, industry conferences, which happens, right? And of course, as I always said, your alumni is a biggest thing. Now, I think the last piece, which I will also say, is there are internships. right? Neeti spoke about vacation jobs, right? You can get a mentor from there. You can get a lot of assistance from there. And then from there, you can just grow your network. So do an internship because one, it gives you an opportunity to network. The second, it also gives you, even if it is not a relevant experience, but it still grows you as a professional, right? It gives you some kind of visibility into the industry. What are we looking at and things like that. And the last one is nowadays, specifically for IT industry, there are a lot of these hackathons which happen. Participate in those hackathons, right? Because again, it's a test of your skills, where you stand, how you score. And if you really score, the companies will approach you, right? You really don't have to network bigger than that. So I think those are the things which you need to definitely look at, Deblina. And as I said, right, be proactive, be professional, and be mindful of whom you're connecting with, and be mindful and sensitive about their time, right? And then form that entire package and go and talk to them. I think those are a couple of things which I would suggest, Deblina, for all of us.
Great. No, thank you so much for sharing the specific examples, Lekha. And I think really, like you said about networking, I've heard this from, someone who's really good at networking, that it's first about giving. It's not about asking. So how do you have that mentality? Even if we don't have a lot of experience, we can give our time, right? And that comes through maybe in some of the internships or in some of the vacation jobs. Maybe we can, I think, like you said, hackathons, we can participate in that. And through that, we can, start contributing and over time build the network. I will stay with you, Lekha, and the other part, which is the tough part.
Yeah.
In today's times, a lot of us don't know what's happening in certain companies, even highly funded companies. We see what's happening in terms of some of their stress, which is causing also layoffs, and especially first jobs. I think people are very worried, because if you take up a first job where you don't know what's going to happen, and then again restarting that job search, it's obviously very, very painful. So, what are certain warning signals, and what should people think about when they are looking at this aspect of, first jobs?
Right. That's truly a difficult question, right? Because we being part of the organization, also sometimes it's a gray area. You would not be able to say what is happening in the organization, because these are some decisions which happens at a very, very high management levels, and not everybody has the visibility, right? Now, that is the situation, Deblina. You, me, or anybody cannot do it. It's a macroeconomic situation. We can't. It's not in our hand now. Not just for early talents. Even it's not in my hand, right? What I'm doing. So I think what we need to build is, we need to be much stronger in these areas and be absolutely resilient about the whole thing, right? And even if something goes wrong, right? You're not thinking about, oh, this is my last job. What do I do? Don't sink into that. Don't sulk about that, right? But what you need to have is keep your skill sets absolutely intact, and keep yourself relevant in the industry. Because what's happening in the industry, whether you get laid off, whether you don't get laid off, it's not something which is in my hand. And every day when you open newspapers, and especially for freshers, right, a lot of organizations are talking about either laying off or deferring the joining dates and all. Now, these are some things which none of us can do anything about. So stay on top of things, look more, read more about the organization. If we can, get all the details possible about the organization, and see if there's some indications which you can get. Again, as I said, talk to somebody who's on senior, right? From that organization, get a mentor. See, this is what I'm reading in the paper. You might not be able to comprehend, but that person can help you to comprehend what it is talking about. So those are the early signs, Deblina, which we can get. But my advice to all of us, right, including me, is to stay absolutely relevant. Is something which I would say is the most important things. And when you're talking about skills, I'm again not talking about, if I give an IT spin to it, I'm not talking about be relevant with your Javas of the world or full stacks of the world, or no. Be relevant in, again, going back to the same, the value which you bring to the table, the value which you can provide to the organization, right? Those are the key things, Deblina, and those are the things which we can do. The rest of it is not in our hand.
Right. Anything to add to that, Neeti? Because then I have a follow-up question for you, Neeti.
Yeah, so I think what Lekha said is bang on. What I bring to the table is equally important than what I'm going to get from the organization. So we have to keep showcasing that every single conversation. She also indicated that internships are absolutely important, and internships is basically a test, right? For you as a candidate and for the organization. I may probably do 3 internships in 6 months or 1 year, and I might decide which company works better for me or which culture is better for me, whether I want to do a full-time job, whether I want to do gig, right? And the organization also figures out whether you are a fit for them or no. So I think there are lots of ways to get this going. It's not easy, I mean, I think while both Lekha and I can sit back and say, okay, 30 years ago when I started my job, obviously it wasn't easy for us. It's not going to be easy even today for every person who's probably attending this webinar, because they are here for a reason. But there are ways and means. I think technology has brought a lot of information at our doorsteps. We have to use it right, and we have to ensure that we are informed. We are on the right track. Again, what Lekha mentioned is work with mentors and coaches, extremely important. Even your college professors and faculty members actually can play the role of your first time mentors who can help you out into the job markets, because they are in some way connected to the industry, and they can guide you, because in most cases, in most schools and colleges, we do not have career counselors who can actually give the absolute right direction. Of course, we have the employment exchanges, which are state governments run, but probably they're not as adequate as one would want it to be. So I think seeking help externally is important. Talking to people is important. Reaching out to people within the industry. And I would just like to say, a job or an experience is an experience. It's better than no job or no experience.
Well said. And in fact, on that point, I would like to drill a little deeper. We spoke about internships a couple of times, but a lot of the work you have been seeing, Neeti, it is a little differentiated, right? So there are internships, there are apprenticeship programs, and there are, the full FTE kind of job, right? Full-time equivalent kind of jobs. So for a fresher, these are all emerging as choices. So even while they're in college and then even after college, right? So if you can just help us decode these terms that are coming up, and also I think you talked about gigs. But I think if you can just decode some of these terms for the freshers, who are attending today, and maybe some of the pros and cons of each of these.
Sure. So, internships largely are more short-term and unpaid, but they are in a way integrated as part of our college curriculums. A large part of it, whether we are doing engineering or we are doing, let's say, hospitality tourism, or we are doing CA, internships become part of our core curriculum as of now, right? Of course, internships are not mandated, or were not mandated till probably about a year and a half ago, in with most of the programs that our schools and colleges were teaching. But it also gives the ability for a student to actually get a first-hand experience, even if it's 15 days, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. So while you don't need to define the particular period of internship, but you can go few hours every day, few weeks, right? And understand what's happening at the workplace. Again, I second what Lekha was saying. It's not necessary that if I am doing BCA, I need to take an internship in coding or development or some sort of computer related work. It can be any sort of experience, right? It'll actually help you improve your soft skills, which is very, very critical. I mean, Lekha actually alluded to some of these skills that recruiters end up looking at, because when it's your first job, you're not looking at just knowledge, you're not looking at just degree. You're looking at learnability of the candidate, right? You're looking at how enthusiastic, whether the person is positive or negative attitude, behavioral traits. So I think when you start doing it, it's a short-term internship also will be able to give you that exposure. So that's primarily internship. Apprenticeship, on the other hand, is governed by certain laws and schemes within the purview of Government of India. So there is a scheme that is run by Ministry of Education called NAPS, National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. And there's a scheme, that is run by Ministry of Skills. Ministry of Education runs NATS, which is the National Apprenticeship Training Scheme. Right now, both have different tenures, minimum 6 months to a maximum of 12 months, or just a one year kind of a thing. Apprenticeships under these schemes are actually paid, fully paid apprentices, where the candidate is getting a stipend which could be 8,000, 10,000, 15,000, depending on industry, job role, location, and all those things. But they're governed by laws, and the employer ends up reporting the apprentices and the numbers back to the respective departments. Okay. Again, if you ask me, is there a difference between an internship and apprenticeship on the job? I would say I think apprentices tend to become a little more long-term and serious in nature. Internships could be short-term, I have to complete a project or I have to do a 2-month, or I use the term vacation jobs. I think those can be termed as internships, but apprenticeships could be slightly more long-term. Okay. When you get paid a stipend, you don't actually get the statutory deductions like the PF, ESIC under the whole stipend or the apprenticeship acts. You also indicated jobs or employment. Now, when I'm getting as a fresher, I'm getting into for my first time employment. That is like a formal employment contract that I have with my employer, and the employer is liable to pay me my statutory dues such as PF, ESIC, and whatever else is applicable depending on states or the roles that I end up doing. Having said that, if you ask me comparison on which is good and which is bad, like I said, I don't think either is anything good or bad. What you get is what you take upfront, get that experience, get onto the role, and that's when you actually start moving ahead. I mean, it's a problem with all freshers, because when we go for interviews, recruiters end up saying, I can't hire you, you have no experience. But how does a fresher get an experience without actually doing something on the job? So I guess somebody has to give them that exposure. And that exposure actually can be by ways of being an intern or an apprentice trainee. And if somebody is getting a full-time employment, great. Please use it to learn whatever best you can learn, because I can tell you with my experience, I also learned, and like I'm saying, I'm old school, really dated. I actually learned how to file documents onto a box file. And I think maybe Lekha and Deblina, you will understand what box files are. Today's kids will probably understand files which are more digital in nature. But I'm saying we started as early as that. And if you don't know these basics, or if you don't know that I have to be in office every time or every day at the same time, I have to dress up in a certain manner. I mean, these are softer powers, these are softer skills that are needed by employers. And if I don't think too many schools and colleges end up teaching these elements, unfortunately, and I think we should put it as part of the curriculum now. But I think these are smaller things that you start picking up on your first, second days, and you start being aware of your environment, being aware of your colleagues, how are they speaking, how are they dressing, their knowledge, where they're learning from. I think there's just so many signals you end up picking in the first time you get into a workplace, whether it's an apprenticeship form, whether it's intern or an employment. I would say either one of them is great to get a foot in the door in the corporate world.
Great. And like you said, the power of showing up day after day and, just kind of being involved in that work itself gives so much of learning and, experience. So I'll come back to you, Lekha. We did talk a little bit about this, but I wanted to expand more specifically now for tech skills. So when you are hiring and training tech professionals in a company like Brillio, what are the must-have skills which you value for freshers?
I'm so glad that you asked that question, right? Because this is a constant question, and this is probably my favorite question. So I think Neeti mentioned this, right? One is you probably have some skills which the college is teaching you, and then you come with that for your first job, with or without an internship, right? Now, I think what we need to focus, and this is not just for freshers or early talent, this is for us as well, right? Every time you look for a job, the thing which you need to increase is your employability quotient. I love to call that as employability quotient. And two mega elements which actually contribute to this is your aptitude and attitude. Simple, right? The experience do come later, whether it is a fresher, whether it is me. If you don't have your aptitude and attitude at the right place, trust me, you would not get your first job, you will not get your last job as well, right? So that's something which you definitely have to fix it. Now, when I say, let me break that down a little more, right? What exactly is an aptitude and attitude? If I break down that further, what I'm looking at as an interviewer when we're talking to freshers in Brillio, right? What we're actually looking at is, transferable skills, right? Quality and the potential in a candidate, your potential to actually adapt, your potential to learn, right? Learn quickly. And most important is, how do you contribute effectively back to the organization? These are small things which we are looking at. Now, there might be a constant question. When I talk to the fresher, they say, Lekha, how do we show all these things? We've never worked in now you don't have to show it in a work environment, but you can show exactly where you have worked. It could be your cultural activities which you have hosted in your college, right? It could be some project work which you have done. So if I further drill it down, we're talking about a strong communication skills. Are you able to articulate what you have done? Are you able to articulate the value which you bring to the table, right? That's my strong communication skill. And can you create a storyline out of it, right? That's basically when I say strong communication skill. Learning agility, right? Today, I think that's the buzzword, that's the keyword. It's basic, it's very simple. If you break that down, can you learn? Can you unlearn? Can you relearn? That's all it is. And throughout your 20, 30 years of career, right? Whether it is your first career, whether you're in the middle of your career, it's a constant process. That's what you do day in, day out. So do you have the ability to actually embrace new challenges, pick it up, learn, and then get going, right? That's my learning agility. Do you have problem solving skills, right? Now, am I solving a programming code? No, that's not expected, right? Probably you're planning your team outing in your college, and then there was a huge hurdle. How did you address that, right? Did you have a critical thinking towards it? So that's another thing. In the same situation, you can also talk about your leadership potential. Did you take that leadership potential, right? Did you show your capability? Did you say, okay, team, relax, I will manage that? So those are some of the things which we talk about. Along with that, we're also looking at teamwork, collaboration. Are you a self-motivated guy? Are you a positive guy, right? Do you bring a lot of positive vibe into the organization, or you just start cribbing about, if there are new challenges which are so positive attitude is something which we are looking at, right? So from an IT perspective, these are very, very key things for us, because whatever they learn in the college, it's a theory part. So when they walk into the college, in fact, if you ask me, there's a 120 days of program which we give them, right? It's all about technology. We teach them cloud, we teach them DevOps, we teach them agile methodology, full stack developer, and now I don't think we should leave this buzzword of all the generative AIs and chat GPTs of the world, right? This is all the buzzword. So those are some things which will definitely teach them, right? Which we will give them more hands-on and all of that. But what do you bring is the positive attitude. Do you have the learning agility? Are you willing to learn? Are you curious? Right? These are some of the things, Devlina, which we have absolutely focused when we are interviewing these candidates.
Makes a lot of sense. Anything to add to that, Neeti?
No, I mean, completely with what Lekha was saying. I think today, and this is a perennial question, a lot of, when parents start asking, why do you guys keep talking about soft skills? When my kid has learned technical skills, he can code, he can write this, he can create a website like at the back of his hand. But I think today, and Lekha is on the other side of the table, but when you talk to recruiters, when you talk to talent acquisition leaders, you'll realize that at the start of the career, I think the softer skills become more critical compared to the hard skills. As you go along, your hard skills, you start developing, you learn a lot more, you build a certain career path, and then you start, upgrading yourself. But even after 8, 10 to 15 years, I would say, if I'm interviewing somebody with 15, 20 years of experience, I would even then look at the softer elements as much as I would look at the technical skill sets, actually. So I think we look at balance. Sorry, Lekha.
No. I was so excited. Even today, right, to our leaders, we teach them how to articulate, right? Yeah. The whole buzzword about storytelling. Yeah. We're teaching storytelling. Our grannies used to, storytell all the time, but we are teaching our leaders. So those are things which go a long way in your career. It's not just for the early talent. It's absolutely important for me, for Neeti, for you, Devlina, for everybody who's in this whole jobs thing.
Yeah. And I think one is careers, right? And that's what we're talking about. But even in our day-to-day lives, when we're dealing with with peers, when we're dealing with family, you're dealing with colleagues, I think these things become very, very critical and important. And how we behave in situations, I think in a way resonates to our personality.
Correct.
I mean, typically, all placement officers would have told the kids who are probably attending today, saying, in a group discussion, you have to take the lead. You should be the first one. You should, so that your leadership skills are shown, right? I mean, there are reasons why kids have been told that.
Yeah.
Because then you know that you can actually take an initiative. And in a way, that's what we're looking at. We are not looking at, oh, he or she is standing up and starting to talk first. We're saying, oh, actually, this person is confident. This person is a go-getter. So I think these are the attributes we are looking at, as against the signals that people end up giving.
Correct. Completely agree. Yeah. And I think I was talking to Coursera, the global CEO. I think he mentioned this, that people earlier used to sign up for technical courses, but even there, a lot more people are now looking for so-called soft skills, which are actually much bigger. And, storytelling, communication, problem solving, critical thinking are things which people are starting to, even on their own, consciously start investing in. And of course, organizations, like you mentioned, Brillio is also investing in the leaders as well as freshers in these skills. So
I would just like to add here, Deblina,
yeah,
Lekha's point about, doing these programs for leaders. I think for a very common program during COVID and the pandemic and work from home, timing was that, actually we did a lot of trainings for leaders to be empathetic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to first ask your colleague how he or she is, and then you say what's happening on work. I mean, they're just small things we end up missing in life. But I think this is so critical at entry level, at mid level, and even as leaders. And in my view, I think as you go up the ladder, these things become
Even
a lot more critical than just your technical skills.
Absolutely.
Correct. No, completely agree. So I think we will get to the questions from the audience, but just one quick rapid fire round to wrap up this fascinating conversation. So, if both of you can talk about your first job very quickly. Lekha, first you, then Neeti.
Okay. My first job was a technology trainer, Deblina. And it was quite difficult because through the day, through the night, I just had to learn, right? Because the next day morning, I'm actually standing in front of a large audience and presenting whatever I have learned. So it was a continuous learning for, I think, for about 8-9 years. Every day at night, like kids, we go back and say, oh, tomorrow is an exam, and then I have to prepare. That was my first job, Deblina, but thoroughly enjoyed.
Nice. And learning in like rapid fire learning. What about you, Neeti?
Yeah. So my first job was with a real estate company, a very large organization. Actually, I started in then what it was called an EDP department. I don't know how many kids today would know what an EDP is. I started coding and then I started managing the department. So basically, my first job was digitalizing financial accounting platforms for the real estate organization. Yeah, so it was amazing, but great experience.
And I think we still look back with a lot of fond memories to that first job, right? I think that's the power of the first job. So I was reading a report by CFA Institute where they talked about the average duration of the first job, right? And how that's changing over time. So what is your opinion? What should be the average duration of that first job?
Lekha, you want to go first?
Absolutely, no problem. So, Deblina, it's a very person dependent question, right? In terms of how you want to look at it. But I will, if you ask me, somebody who has spent like 21 years in the industry, I would say you should not put a cap to it, right? But take it as it goes, right? And I will tell you how to approach that, how much time you need to spend. The first year when you're in your first job, the first year is all about settling down and learning. It's a whole spectrum for you to develop your skills, your soft skills, your hard skills. And this time it's definitely your technology skills if it is an IT thing, right? So leverage that entire potential which the organization is giving it to you, and then learn as much as possible, be a sponge, learn as much as possible, right? So that's the first year is gone, right? And if somebody says, I will do it in two months, that's not true, right? It takes a year for us to learn and settle down. The next second and third year is where you are actually giving it back, right? That's when your manager, your organization is actually seeing you perform, right? In terms of what is in that whole spectrum, how are you going to perform, right? What is the proficiency with you perform? What is the discipline with which you're performing, right? So spend that 2 to 3 years for you to stay there and perform. Now, beyond that is something which you can always question, right? Okay, what do I do next? Now, after 3 years is where you also see the organization responding back, right? You get a promotion, you get a role enhancement, you get a stretched role, some things like that. Now, that's actually meeting. What if I go back to my answer to the first question?
The
When
value.
you decided 5 years, where do you want to see yourself? Is this organization actually helping you to get there? Don't leave the company, right? Because it's easy. You have already put your, you have already built your rapport. You have shown people that you can work. Why leave, right? Just continue that. So I think I would take that as steps to move ahead. And if in every 2 years, every 3 years, if there is a role enhancement, I'm not talking about just a compensation part of it, but there is a role enhancement, there's an enrichment of this, and you're getting closer to what your end objective is, like 5 years, 10 years, I want to become there, continue that. Now that's my suggestion. Having said that, right? But you also have to be mindful in terms of if it's a toxic environment, right? Your development is kind of stagnant, stunted, right? You don't have a great manager who doesn't believe in you. He's not a mentor. Then something which you will have to take a decision out and then see how you want to really, figure that out situation and get out of that. But mostly, I think you should stay in that and see what organization has to offer first. Of course, what you have to offer to the organization, lay that out first, and then see what organization have to give back to you and see how close are you getting to your career goals. I think that's how you should look at it and not cap a number saying 3 years. People talk about 3 years in the first job, right? I'm okay with that, but this is how you should look at it.
Great, great.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Lekha is saying, Deblina. I don't think anyone should take a job with a thought saying I'm going to
Timeline.
years, then the next 2 years. I mean, I've seen a lot of kids who have actually all planned and they have the chart saying tuck, 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 year 2 this, year 4 this, year 5 this. Honestly, once you hit the road, life is not as simple saying, you're just going to go that way. There'll be lots of twists and turns. So I think we need to be prepared. As long as you're learning, as long as you're growing. And I like what Lekha said, in one of her previous responses, is that when you're identifying a company, if it's a growth organization, you will continue to grow, right? And as long as you believe that you're growing and you're getting towards what your goal is, I don't think there's any hurry to change a job. I mean, let's also understand that every time I change a job, I'm actually taking 2 steps back first before I take the 1 step ahead.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not like I'm jumping 2 steps or 3 steps. I'm actually jumping a -1 and then a +1. And so it's going to take me time. I'm going to establish myself in a new organization. People have to start trusting me. I need to know the culture. It may be the right bet. It may not be the right bet. And obviously, a known devil is much, much better than an unknown devil. So, if you're comfortable, if you're growing, you're happy, you're getting the money that you're looking for. I mean, if you've ticked at least 7 out of 10 boxes, I don't see any reason to jump in a hurry.
Got it. So it's 6:44. Let's take some audience questions if you both are fine.
Yep, absolutely.
Sure.
So there's a question from Anand Jaiswal, studying BCom. So he's saying, what should I say if I don't know the answer of a question in an interview?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's no point fibbing and creating something in your head when you're blank about it. And it happens all the time, and it's okay not to know an answer, actually. I think recruiters and interviewers are absolutely okay if you say, hey, you know what, I don't know this, or if I have a second round, I can come back. But instead of creating something or cooking an answer, which everybody sees through, actually.
Got it. Great. So there are quite a few questions on finance and CA. These are from either BCom students or chartered account students or MBA students as well. So I'm going to club them together. And, the questions are around, I want to pursue a career in finance. And and finance analyst. So what are the options where I can get a roadmap for development and any virtual internships through platforms like Forage to get practical experience? Are these helpful? And taking courses from Coursera, Udemy, what are the important parts there? And so basically, yeah, so any advice on finance jobs, how can we how can we upskill, how can we apply, how can we use internships? I think some of the things which you already spoke about, but any answers specifically for finance?
Lekha, you can go ahead and I'll add.
I might not have answers very specific to finance, Deblina, but my recommendation to them would be, of course, to utilize whatever the resources they have, right, which will help them upskill or reskill, whatever that's point number one. The point number two would be, as I always say, right, have a mentor, because they will definitely help you to chart out in terms of what are those 10 things which you need to learn and what are the things which you can avoid, and then be prepared for an interview. That's irrespective of which domain we're talking about, right? Finance or IT or retail or whatever we're talking about. I think that will be my strong recommendation. And these mentors would try and see if you can get a mentor from the same domain so that they can actually chart out the development plan also for you, right? In terms of how does a career look like for a finance person. So have a mentor, have that conversation. And as I said, attend. I'm sure every area has these networking events, career fairs, and all of that. Be part of all those things, which will help you to develop that entire charter for you, Debbie.
Got it. So there are a couple of questions which are interesting around a change in the area, right? When they're looking for jobs. This is from Savin and Shashi Shekhar Sharma. So what they're saying is, I'll club the questions again. So one person has done banking, worked in banking, and now want to shift in the career, right? Another person said that not good in coding, they feel, and now want to actually choose into non-technical line. So if you want to shift, what you studied into a different area, again, is there any pathway to do it in an easier way?
I mean, I don't think there is any easy answer to that question or any easy way out. I think the only way is you have to work your way up all over again. There's nothing wrong in shifting your career stream. Okay, there's really nothing wrong. I mean, lots of engineers who actually stopped their technical job and doing something which was their passion, which they could not follow early on, right? Or they decided that this skill set is not for me, I'm going to do something else. So there's really nothing wrong in it. You will have to upskill yourself, actually reskill yourself, not upskill yourself, right? Having said that, even if you work for 8 years, 5 years in a bank, I would say that experience will not go waste, because when you're applying to another industry for another job role, provided you have reskilled and gotten that additional skill required for that industry, I think your banking experience will actually count, and an industry will take it at face value rather than saying you have to start from year zero. It really doesn't happen that way. So it's okay whether you're leaving your coding job, whether you're leaving your banking job. I think it's absolutely okay. If you're in early years of your career, I would actually advise to do an apprenticeship or an internship as well, just so that you get a hang of the new role or the new industry before you take the entire shift head on. Because sometimes we like, grass is always greener on the other side. Your job is very, very nice. I have a mundane job, so let me jump to your side of the table. But then it may not be as easy or as simple as it looks from the other side. So I think taking things on a test ride is always better, right? Talking to people, I love what Lekha said. She kept using the word mentors, and I also keep reiterating that talk to people from the industry, find out people who've done the shift, see how easy or difficult it was. Because I'll give you an example: an engineer leaving his or her job and doing, let's say journalism, for example. Okay, obviously it's not easy. And I know people, by the way, who've done that. They understand technology completely. They love writing. So they've actually moved to the other side. But obviously it was difficult. It was one day at a time. So I think when we do the shifts, we have to be prepared that there'll be days we'll not be happy with the transition. We'll be frustrated. Mentally, we have to be prepared with all this. And it's something that happens with every transition or every shift. So we need to be prepared. We need to be skilled. Probably we need to do more learning than somebody in that industry would do otherwise, just to prove that yes, I am competent enough and good enough to get into this and into a lateral role. Actually,
I think, I'll also add, don't do this, don't make a decision because of peer pressure, right? Make a decision or do not make a decision because of the peer pressure. And as Neeti said, grasses are always green on the other side. Do not make a decision basis that. If you truly feel that's where your passion is, exactly, no harm in changing, no harm in shifting. But we need to be absolutely prepared for the fact that you will have to work harder, longer, and it might take another 5 years to actually for you to get to where people at your age are, another 5 years for you to get there, right? So as long as you're prepared for this and mentally up for this, I think there is no harm in getting there.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll just add to the previous question, I think on the finance one, that I think there was a list of questions that you had also indicated, right? I think today in the financial industry, it's not just about knowing accounting or financial, modules as or a skill set. I think a lot of technology enablement has happened in the financial industry. So I think people have to learn those skills. Of course, learn research. I mean, you mentioned financial analyst as one key role people could be looking at, right? So there's accounting, and there is, a couple of other such technical skills in the financial industry, but there'll be also research, there'll be data analysis, there'll be a lot of communication, organization, there's just so many roles and skill sets actually one need to learn. Problem solving, financial literacy is important, critical thinking. And I heard this Lekha say this couple of times, organization skills, all of these skill sets are so important. So if somebody is wanting to get to that role, you will have to break it down saying, hey, I need these 10 skill sets. I probably have 3 out of the 10, and I need to learn the balance 7 before I think about getting a financial analyst role as my end goal. So I think there are steps to every career. There are obviously learning pathways. There are some self-learning, programs that are available. There are programs available where there's an instructor who's training them. So find your path, find what works best for you for learning. But I don't think we can shy away from continuously upskilling ourselves and learning more and more on a daily basis. Even if you're in the same job, you can't just sit quiet saying, hey, I'm done and, I've got a job, so now I can just not upgrade myself. That's not going to work anymore for any one of us, actually.
Correct. I think just to your point on financial technology, I think Talent Spread are tied up with NSE, National Stock Exchange, to actually create programs around that. And there are so many emerging roles, like forensic accounting and, even ESG. So within financial analysis, also there are specializations. It's not one role. There are so many sub roles that are emerging within that, and each of them can become a specialization for people who choose to. And we'll keep trying to bring this out in multiple articles, going forward as well. So some of the questions we are not able to answer, we'll try to make sure we can, come out with answers through the articles. Let's take a couple of more. So there's one quick question, Muhammadul Hassan Mola. So he's asking, is cover letter mandatory to be attached with resume for freshers?
I think it is. It'll just help your resume actually go probably up the order. Otherwise, somebody will have to go through your resume to see whether you actually fit the bill or not. So in a way, your cover letter can help the recruiter filter faster and move you to the right side of the pile.
Got it. So I think there are a couple of people who've asked about this, that after graduation, they had to take a break for different reasons, and now they're applying. So obviously it's more tough because, they may not get shortlisted easily. So is there anything which can help them, when they are going through a job search after a small break or a longer break?
I can go on that. So when you take a break, Deblina, and especially for freshers, right? Again, going back to, if you remember the skill sets which we look at when we are interviewing, it's all the softer aspects, right? So the way it could be anything basis which you have taken that sabbatical or the break, right? So when you come back to the interviewer panel, right, the way you would talk about the break is not, okay, I went on a break, but what did you do in that break, right? One is, of course, you were trying to figure out whatever reasons why you took a break, but did you continuously skill yourself, right? Did you upskill? Did you reskill? Did you do some small internship here and there? You would not have been able to, get the complete job, but did you work 1 hour in some place, right? I might just go back and say, did you work 1 hour in a cafe coffee day? Because that itself gives you an experience. That's a straight experience to handle customers. right? Which is the core for everything what we are trying to do. So if you're able to position yourself, what you did in that gap, right? And yet you took a gap, you took a break, but yet you completely were focused on upskilling yourself because you knew that 2 years from now, I will get back to job. I wanted to get back to job. So if you narrate that story in that fashion, right? Saying 2 years from now, I wanted to get back. So that's why I did this. That actually gives me a very, very happy moment saying, okay, this person is really, really talented, right? Curious, and there's no harm. Let's bet on that person, right? So I think I would approach that way, and not just answering, but I would approach, practicing that what I said during that gap or a break, whatever you're taking.
Yeah. I'll just add one word to what Lekha said. I think staying relevant is important. Yeah. You can't be dated anymore, right? I mean, you can't say, okay, 3 years break, but I still know what I knew 3 years ago and not what is needed today. Then you can't really get a job. But if you're relevant, if you've upskilled, obviously, yes, I think, I think the other thing is you have to be prepared to start with today's freshers rather than saying, give me that leeway of a 2-year or a 3-year gap. That is not, that I don't, employers will definitely not give that.
Got it. Got it. There's an interesting question from Ashley Alexander. He's saying, any tips to suggest how do you maintain a calm and composed demeanor during interview to minimize nervousness?
Drink a lot of water. I think, so first of all, the way I look at it, even today, right? When I go for so butterflies are always in your stomach when you're up there for the interview. Even today, after 20 years of experience, when I'm going for an interview, the first 7 minutes or 7 seconds, whatever you call it as, it's always butterflies in you. But if you're absolutely prepared, right? And if you're truthful to what you're going to say, I don't think there has to be any kind of fear in your nervousness, fear, anything in your mind, right? That first 7 seconds of butterflies, I would want to say it's okay, because that also gives you that urge to do better. That also gives you that kick and that motivation to ensure that, yes, I will do it. I need to crack this. So that's okay. Don't worry about that. That nervousness is there with all of us, right? Not just you. But further from there, if you are absolutely prepared, if you're absolutely honest and truthful about what you're going to say, I don't think there is a problem. And I think there was one question that somebody asked, what would you say if you don't know the answer? There's no harm, because nobody knows everything. So it is absolutely okay for you to say, I don't know this answer, but can I get back to you? Right? Or if you think you did not understand the question, ask for more explanation about it. Ask for more context to it. It's just that you might know the answer. It's just that the way the question was put to you, you might not have the answer. So try and get an explanation in terms of what that question is, and then go ahead. And in spite of that, if you don't know, that's it, because you're not expected to know everything in the world. Right? Yeah.
Right. I think there were a couple of questions on what is better, startup versus MNC. So we have written about this on ETCareers. It's a personal choice. And there are pros and cons. So please feel free to read that. And what we'll do is, in the interest of time, we will gather together some of these questions, and we'll either try to come up with articles around this, or we'll also in a bunch together. And if there are enough questions, we'll do another webinar like this. And, hopefully more of you can join. So with that, I would love to thank our speakers today, Lekha and Neeti, for taking out time and for this very fascinating discussion. I think the question will never end for freshers, and we are only attempting to give some of the answers. But welcome everybody to kind of keep sharing back your thoughts and more questions, and we'll keep trying to bring back different ways of answering these questions. Thank you so much, Lekha, and thank you so much, Neeti.
Thank you. Thank you, Devlina.
Thanks, Devlina. Thanks, Neeti. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
That's it from ETCareers.